They didn't look at things the same. They didn't keep track of time the same. They didn't celebrate a birthday. They didn't keep track of particular days. They were only as old as many winters as they had survived. The winter time was the hardest time for them to live. If they survived it, that was another winter they had survived. So they considered themselves to be so many winters old. Usually during the starving moon, February, an elder would sit in his lodge and he would have a tanned hide before him and he would paint pictures on his hide. And these pictures was the only written history, so to speak, that the people had to follow. These pictures would represent brave warriors, elders going away, children coming to be, triumphs and the tragedies that had taken place during the year, a history of the cycle of life of these people. And that is what the children had to know where their people came from, who they were, what path that their kind had followed. That's what they had to go on. And I kind of like to, this evening here in a little while, like to kind of take a look at our road count. And so we can all kind of wonder the path that we follow and where we've come from and where we're going. But
come over here.
so the Europeans came here, and I mentioned earlier, a couple of hundred years ago, Lewis and Clark had just returned from probably one of the most, maybe the most epic adventure that mankind had ever encountered. Lewis and Clark and 27 men in a couple of pirogues, which were like big canoes, and a couple of keel boats, which were a boat about 40 foot long with oars on the side and a mast, traveled up the Missouri River with the intention of spending 1 year to go to the Pacific Ocean and back again. They was traveling upstream of a mighty river, the Missouri River. And so they was battling the current, plus they was traveling west where the prevailing winds would come from. And so they couldn't row these boats upstream, as a rule. The sail on the mast did them virtually no good at all. They spend most of their time with the men on shore or alongshore with what they called cordell lines or ropes, which eventually ended up being made entirely of elk skin because they're at that time modern materials had pretty much worn out on them. They use these cordell lines to tow these boats up this river, and a Herculean effort indeed. It certainly was. By the end of the first season, before winter had set in, this 1 year journey they had intended to make all the way to the Pacific Ocean had landed them in what's now North Dakota. And they stayed with the Mandan tribe. They had left St. Louis, which was by then quite a good sized community for back then, of about 1,500 people in St. Louis. They landed with the Mandan people and spent the winter there, and here was a community of people of about 1,500 people. So this Mandan tribe, as we have a habit of calling them, this tribe of natives and a few Frenchmen was every bit as big, at least as populated, as St. Louis was.